What's up, everybody, and welcome to Real Time for the Real Everyday Movie Fan. I am, of course, your host, Josh Williams. Thank you so much for joining us here today, and I am joined by my good friends, James and Ryan. How you doing, boys?
I was going to introduce myself, but okay, I'm Ryan.
No, I'm going to do it this time because I'm going to change it up. So there.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much for joining us here today because we're here to give you our spoiler-heavy, I am emphasizing that, review of Black Widow. Now, Ryan, who's all in Black Widow? Who directed and wrote it?
Black Widow is directed by Cate Shortland. Who wrote it? We never do that, but okay. I can tell you off the top of my head, it's credited as story by Jack Schaeffer and Ned Benson, and screenplay by Eric Pearson.
Nice.
Of course, stars Scarlett Johansson, Florence Pugh, David Harbour, Rachel Weisz, O.T. Fagbenle, Olga Kurylenko, Ray Winstone, and of note, Ever Anderson. And something I wanted to mention to you guys, the actress who plays young Natasha at the beginning of this movie is Ever Anderson. She is the daughter of Mila Jovovich and Paul W.S. Anderson.
I thought she looked familiar.
You can hope that she will make better choices in her career than her parents. And her next big role is she is playing Wendy in Disney's remake of Peter Pan.
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
When you said Wendy, I thought it was going to be like the life story of Wendy's the restaurant.
No.
I mean, Mila Jovovich, she did good at the beginning with like Fifth Element and stuff like that.
Yes.
But
total
You mean
side
where she
note,
didn't have to speak English?
Yeah.
True.
No, total side note, like a friend of mine, we got drunk one night and he was getting very drunk and he couldn't pronounce her name and he was talking about Mila Jovovich, and we just made jokes at the syllables. It kept adding more syllables and more. Mila Jovovich.
Oh my God, that's jeez, messed up, man. No. All right, guys.
Anyway.
Before we get into our review, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you receive more of our various content in the future. Also, I want to let you know that this review is sponsored by B&B Missouri 6 Theater, so we're going to do a quick promotional video for them. Then we'll be right back into the review. We'll be right back. B&B Missouri 6 is the premier theater to see a movie if you're in the Missouri area. The refreshments are delicious, the seats give you full reclining comfort, and the movie viewing experience is euphoric. But the main reason I wanted B&B to be my sponsor is their staff and the overall movie-going experience they provide. They're professional, friendly, inviting, and they truly have you leaving the theater feeling, as their motto goes, the magic of the movies. All right, guys, thank you so much for indulging me. I have to give a shout out to my sponsor because they take really great care of me and us. Whenever Ryan comes down, you know, he gets hooked up just like I do to help review these movies so we can get them out to you guys. So now we got everything out the way. Let's get into Black Widow. Now, James, he's in Canada. He had to rent it on Disney Plus because movie theaters are slowly opening. Ryan, you got to see it in the theater, right? Or did you pay for it? Okay, good.
No, I saw it in theater and I had a beer. And it was awesome. You know, like I just kept thinking Pulp Fiction. It's now America. We can do that in. So
now I got
To be fair, theaters like that have existed for a little while, but they've been niche.
What's that?
I said the theaters like that have existed for a little while. Like there's the Alamo Draft House, but they're very niche.
yeah, we have Flicks Brew House here in Des Moines, but this was just a regular theater, Jordan Creek Mall, and
okay, yeah,
yeah. So
nice.
But anyway,
yes. Again, we're giving you guys a warning right now. This is spoiler heavy. Hitting the review. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Come back. If you're watching it now, that means you have seen it and you're ready to talk spoilers with us. Now, we all saw it. Without giving our review or scores first, what is just our overall general thoughts? Ryan, you first. You didn't like it?
I mean, it was. Everyone else seems to like it so much. Like, oh my God, you're so good! Like on Facebook and everything. Like all the, and all the comments on the promotion stuff. Oh my God, it was like so good. Like, like it was, to me. It was just. I mean, it was fine. Do you not want me to give my score right now, or?
Well, go ahead. No, go ahead. I just wanted to get your
I'm probably gonna be nice and give it a 6 out of 10, which is like fresh, fairly fresh. Like, you gotta give it a sniff before you eat it. But yeah, well, that's fresh. But I mean, to me, it's there's no argument. Like one of the promotions said this was the best Marvel movie, and of course, there's always someone somewhere saying something that they picked those reviews out of. I actually had to pause the video, find out exactly who said that, look him up online. And I'm tempted to like Twitter bomb, like be a Twitter idiot, and be like, "You're the dumbest guy." Like, there's no argument for this being like the best Marvel movie or even a great movie. It's a good movie at best. It's yeah. I mean, it's kind of weak to me. I mean, I understand it's kind of about Natasha Romanoff going back and telling sort of the completion of her story before what we know of as her ultimate demise, and giving her some resolution, giving her some closure on a lot of the stuff of her past. But it's a very simple story. It really almost didn't have to be 2 hours. It could have been like a 90-minute movie. I think a lot of the action scenes kind of inflate it. And a lot of it didn't work for me. We can get into that later on. Like, a lot of the specifics didn't work for me, but that's kind of my general thoughts.
Okay. James?
I had to talk to a friend of mine after I saw this, and kind of like shoot back and forth with him about this, because I can't articulate my thoughts about this movie, which is going to make a terrible review, but I'm here anyway. Because I didn't enjoy this film as much as everyone else did.
Oh, wow.
But I can't find fault in it. I can't find specific things. That's not true. There's one or two things that I don't like that are very specific, but it's like, as a whole, I can't really fault the film as it is. Like, I can't find legitimate criticism for it that I think merits my feelings on it. So I think, and a friend of mine kind of framed it as, this movie just isn't for you. And I can accept that. I accept that, like, Natasha's never been a character I have a lot of vested interest in. I don't think Marvel in the MCU has really done her well, because they've never really found a good sort of consistent role for her. And some of the choices that they've made for her character have been really poor. I'm looking at you, Joss Whedon, and the whole "I'm a monster because I can't have children" thing, which is a misreading of the scene, but it's still, it's not good writing. And I don't think that she's ever gotten fair shake, but I also don't have any sort of like investment in her character. There is an audience that very much does, and this film has been something that people have been anticipating since the first Avengers film, basically. I mean, kind of Iron Man 2, but mostly the first Avengers film, because that's where, you know, we really got to know her. She wasn't just a femme fatale secondary character. She became a person in that film.
Yep. It's basically a sex pot in Iron Man 2. Yeah,
but like, and people have been wanting to see her backstory, like where she came from, how all of this came to be. They've been wanting to get to know her more and like understand things about her background and her character development, especially now that, you know, she got such a lackluster ending. A lot of people were very disappointed with her death, which, I mean, spoilers for Endgame, but if you haven't seen it at this point, I can't help you. So, like, I don't think that this is the farewell that she deserved as a character. But again, I acknowledge that this film isn't for me, in the way that, like, I wasn't a big fan of Guardians either, and everybody seems to love Guardians. And like the second and third Iron Man films didn't work for me, where a lot of people love the third Iron Man film. So like, certain films are just not for certain people, and I'm okay with not liking every Marvel movie. But again, I can't articulate what it is about this that doesn't work, and it's driving me crazy. So I'm going to give it a solid C, a 7 out of 10, because it's not terrible, but like, I don't know what it is. And it's bugging me.
So, I mean, after I give my quick thoughts, we'll kind of go into what we like. Maybe that'll trigger some things as you remember it in your head, what you may not like. For me, it's funny. I'm actually going to be the odd person out. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I found myself really caring about the story that was progressing through it and the character developments of both. It was very simple. It was not very simple. It's very clearly me a passing of the baton to Florence Pugh's character. Yeah. Her sister, her quote unquote little sister, which I honestly, going in this movie, I thought they were all actually family. Like, no joke. Like, I thought they were actually family. It turns out, you know, that they're just her fake Russian family who, you know, she was on assignment with these people. So that was very interesting to me. And I just found myself laughing a lot, just enjoying the ride. The action scenes were actually phenomenal, quite done well, and very interesting new action scenes that we really haven't seen before. And I find myself really loving it, and I'm probably going to give it, I'd say an 8.5.
Wow.
So I really enjoyed it. I still had a couple issues here and there. So, but to me, this is like, we've seen a lot of big time budget films coming in theaters already, but this to me feels like the blockbuster summer film that people have been waiting for. That's actually good quality and not just like, because you remember when you watched like Kong versus Godzilla, you're not expecting some kind of Shakespearean story. You're just expecting monsters versus, monsters fighting and killing each other. Whereas this, there was a lot of heart to it. There's a lot of story to it, in my opinion. A lot of character development between the relationships, and maybe it even gives a little more context into her sacrifice in Endgame. So those are the things I really enjoyed. And I'll start off top of what I really enjoyed, what I thought was one of the best parts in Who Stole the Show, and that was Florence Pugh. She stole the show. And if anybody's haven't known what she's in, she's been in movies like Fighting with My Family, Little Women, and Midsommar. If you have not seen those three performances, watch them, please. She
was nominated for an Oscar for Little Women.
Yep, exactly. She was even nominated for an Oscar for Little Women. So she is a young talented actress. I didn't realize how good of action scenes she was in, like how good she was in action scenes until this. And she really sells it well. The pain that she might feel, or just the anger. She just does a great job all around. And
her great taste in vests.
What's that?
Her great taste in vests.
She gets all the best lines in the movie, to be fair. I mean, they just gave her all the best lines. So.
But I just love that part too. I even love that part because it gives more. It's a little tiny thing, but that's the same vest you see Black Widow in Infinity War.
When I finished watching it last night with a friend, I pulled up Infinity War, fast forward to that scene, paused it, and went, look, she has the vest.
It's the same.
It's the origin story of the vest. That's what's really important here, guys.
It's not. No. It's the emotional weight of what that vest means now. Yeah, it's the little
details of emotional weight. Exactly. That's why I feel like the writing was very carefully written. Now there were some parts in it that there's certain lines that I found were really cheesy. There was a line, I can't remember the exact line, but it was between Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, and the big bad guy who was in charge of the Red Room.
Uncle Touchy.
He said something. I can't remember exactly what it was. I remember I burst out laughing like, that was the cheesiest line I think I've ever heard in the MCU, period.
Really? I have no idea what that would be.
I can't remember the exact line.
Don't.
What's that?
I have no idea what that would be. I don't remember anything cheesy about that exchange or that conversation.
There was one cheesy line there that I was like, I can't even remember it, and I hate the fact I can't remember it, but I just remember laughing, not in a good way, just kind of rolled my eyes like, wow. Okay, that kind of took me out of it a little bit. But I'll talk about some other stuff I may like as we go on back and forth with one another. Florence Pugh is my biggest one. What about you, Ryan? What are some of the things you actually did like about the film that you found enjoyment out of?
I mean, Florence Pugh, certainly she got a lot of the best lines. This would be a cool way to die. Eric Pearson, who co-wrote the screenplay for Thor Ragnarok and had a lot of funny lines in that movie, wrote the screenplay for this movie. And it had some funny stuff in it. And it was, like I said, it was kind of interesting to see Natasha Romanoff go back. Does she actually go back to Russia at all? But go back to the Red Room and kind of confront her past in that way.
Yep.
I was always disappointed that Julie Delpy didn't show up because if you remember in Age of Ultron, when they flash back to her being trained as the Black Widow, Julie Delpy shows up, who's an acclaimed actress. And it's like, oh, holy shit, that's Julie Delpy. Like she's totally going to be the villain in Black Widow if they ever make it. And then of course they make it.
I think that's part of the problem with the way this movie was made is that it took so long for it to come out.
Right.
That they clearly had plans early on and were planting seeds early on, but because of studio politics, it took a decade for this thing to be made. No, not quite a decade, 8-9 years, something like that. And it kind of shows a little bit, in my opinion, because I feel like this movie should have come a little bit earlier in the sort of lineup of movies. Not obviously we've had 2 years of delay with COVID and whatnot, but even before that, its place in a time, it feels a little out of time to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard a lot of other people say that as well.
Yeah, and for me, so another thing I liked, and James, you can chime in one of yours. Something I thought of right now when Ryan was saying something was I really like, because at first I felt like the one of the things I first didn't like about the movie was it kind of felt like it was not even her story. Like it was something she was forced into. But when I thought about it, she forced herself into it just because what her defecting the way she did from the Red Room is what caused all the other widows to be mind controlled, essentially. So she's almost like she had this sense of duty, like she has to finish this now.
I do have some question about that because she clearly has some mind control too. Because what's his name? Like she has the conditioning where she can't kill him.
No,
she isn't quite as autonomous. But like
it was okay. So her quote unquote mother explained it. It's a pheromone that he puts on himself that people, anybody, women, men, anybody in the vicinity of him can't harm him. Now, I didn't like that much because that was kind of like it wasn't
it's
fully
a Bond
explained.
Type.
You know what I mean? It was kind of like just accept it and move forward kind of thing. I didn't like that too much, but that was the reasoning it was a pheromone that he put on himself that forces everybody around him like they can't harm him kind of thing. So that's why she severed the nerve in her nose.
Yeah, as a callback to Avengers.
Exactly.
When she knocked Hawkeye's face against the side of the catwalk and woke him up from his brainwashing, she remembered that and did something similar.
Yep. So that was one of the other small things I didn't like. But sorry, James, go ahead.
One of the things I liked that they tie in that this entire there's sort of an escalation of the Widow program, leading to one of my least favorite parts, and I'll get to it. Taskmaster.
Yeah.
I'll get to that in a minute. I do like that they imply that they stole plans from Hydra within S.H.I.E.L.D. to create their own Winter Soldier, and that's what that's the escalation of what they've been doing is the programming of the Widows. It can clearly be undone by this red mist thing that they've created that we don't really fully explain either. It's just sort of a Deus Ex Machina that they've got for whatever reason. Sorry, it's more of a MacGuffin, I guess, in a way. Although it does have a purpose. But I like that they build that into already existing sort of shorthand of, we know what the Winter Soldier program is, we know how it works because we saw Bucky and his deprogramming and all that stuff, and how difficult it was for him to break out of that and see the escalation of the Widows are there, but they have a flaw, so we have to create something that's even more sort of along those lines. The thing that really worked for me in this movie was, and it didn't work the first time I watched it, I had to go back and watch it again, was the relationship between the family, and specifically what I liked is not the relationship between the family, because clearly that's a very toxic, broken thing that's, left a lot of scars for all of them except for David Harbour's character, who was just
Red Guardian.
He's a joke the entire time, and that's one of my other big complaints is that he isn't even a person. He's just a recurring joke. I like that the family aspect of this is sort of an impetus for her to go back to the Avengers, because they are a very healthy family for her. They are an actual family for her, as opposed to this found family, forced family, whatever you want to call it. That wasn't good for her, but she needs to bring the Avengers back together, and it gives a reason for what she does for the rest of her turn in the MCU. That was my favorite part. Coming back to Taskmaster, Taskmaster has always been one of my favorite non-Spider-Man villains in Marvel, because he is basically kind of unbeatable. Not quite, but because of his power set, he's basically like a Batman type character where he has, because of sort of photographic reflexes and his years of experience with all kinds of superheroes, he stored up all of these combat strategies and combat styles over the years, to the point where he can overcome just about any character's ability through just pure skill and strategy. And I think he makes such a great foil, and I don't feel like this film, they touch on it a little bit where he's watching the airport fight and he's seeing Hawkeye versus Black Panther, and we see him using the shield much like Captain America. So he's clearly studied the Avengers and whatnot, especially the Avengers that have more human level skills as opposed to Spider-Man, because he can't mimic actual powers, he can only mimic skills. which is a fine line, but I think everyone understands what I'm saying. Whereas in this, the Taskmaster, like they imply that stuff, but I don't feel like they ever really portray it well enough.
Flesh it out, yeah.
And I feel like you could put just about any character into that role of Taskmaster, and the end result would be about the same. I don't feel like this needed to be Taskmaster as opposed to like any other masked character. That like Crossbones, I feel like got more character development than Taskmaster did.
Yeah.
I like Flag Smasher got way more character development than Taskmaster did, and it's like these are like C-level villains, whereas Taskmaster is at least B, if not, in my opinion, A tier sort of villain. And unfortunately, like there is a level of like expectation versus what they're promising, and I don't think that they actually promised Taskmaster. So this is partially on me and my expectations for the film, but I do feel let down by that. But in terms of like what they actually deliver in the film, I still feel like they didn't give that character enough, because they are basically just faceless and like building towards just the twist of spoiler, it being the daughter that Nat killed, trying to get rid of the big bad. And like the character never really gets any sort of redemption or any sort of like agency or personality or anything. Like there's no sort of like it's very similar to the way they, like, coming back to my point about the Winter Soldier, it's very similar to what they were doing with Bucky, but Bucky actually got some sort of like remembrance of like who he was and flashback to moments with Steve and whatnot. And there was some like confusion and inner turmoil, and like we don't really get any of that with her. She's just a mindless automaton that could have been any character. It didn't need to be Taskmaster. And I feel like they really dropped the ball on that villain.
And I think they wrote themselves in a corner with Taskmaster. Like, I didn't mind the fact that it was, you know, his daughter, you know, that Natasha.
I don't mind the twist
up.
at all. I don't mind them changing the identity.
Yeah.
That's all fine.
I think they wrote themselves into a corner as far as like her abilities, and they don't really touch up on them as much. And they didn't, like I said, they didn't really go into, they wrote themselves in the corner, and also the fact that she was also being mind controlled kind of thing, whereas I wish they actually wouldn't have done that. I wish, even though it's done all the time, I feel like it would have been better if she wasn't mind controlled and she was doing this of her own volition to get revenge. You know what I mean? And that would have given it a little more depth, because she's so angry and holding on to that anger, and then maybe there's like fighting / conversation between her and between Natasha and Taskmaster to eventually let that go, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Maybe that could have been a third act thing where she's mindless for most of it, but then she's kind of snapped out of it, and then we get to see her personality and character.
I
she's
like
still
that.
after revenge.
I kind of like that she finally breaks her out of it, and the only thing she has to say when she's been freed is he gone? Like,
yeah.
That's the only,
but
like,
that's it. That's like that is the closest thing we get to any sort of resolution or character development for that person whatsoever.
I think it's kind of neat that's all that needs to be said for her in ways. Like, that's the only thing that she. Really
I don't think it
like,
is all that needs to be
that
said.
son of a bitch gone. Like, is that like because?
Right.
I don't know, but
like, I appreciate the sentiment, and I agree that that's what the character needs. But I don't feel like it landed the way they wanted it to, and I don't feel like that's enough for. Like, she's still just
sure.
It's just sort of a final tiny note on top of like a nothing character, whose entire buildup is just for that twist.
Right.
Yeah, and it doesn't really. I don't know if it adds much to Natasha's journey that was Dragonov's daughter. And
no, because we've never seen them before. Like part of the fervor beforehand was everyone was guessing that it was the mother, because there would be that pre-established relationship or not pre-established before this, but like there would be a little more weight to her being sort of a double agent kind of thing, and like the broken family aspect and whatnot, which,
right,
even though that was predictable and everyone saw it coming, I'm glad they kind of didn't go with it. But at the same time, I feel like that would have given a little more weight to that character. Now, granted, this is only one aspect of the film, and she ultimately isn't the actual villain. It's Uncle Touchy the entire time.
Where is that coming from? Is that
Uncle Touchy was a bit by Patton Oswalt.
Okay.
I won't go into it. I have nicknames for characters. My friend was calling him Harvey Weinstein.
Oh my god.
Because he has a Harvey Weinstein vibe to him.
Yeah.
But we won't go there.
We won't go into that.
Saying that.
But that for me, just like plot wise. So like the plot's very simple. It's like again, there's things that aren't explained that I still am really frustrated by. Like I don't know where is the red stuff supposed to come from? How did Yelena know how to get it to Natasha? All this sort of stuff. And maybe those would be fewer flaws. Maybe there will be fewer flaws for me as if I watch it again and sort of clarify some stuff. But you know, once they establish the plot, like we got to go find the red room and destroy and kill Kurylenko. That's it.